At last.
So I
I've,
think between this morning and already recording one and not recording the audio, we've lost 2 hours.
I think so, yeah. Time will never get back. Time will never get back.
Absolutely.
Things are, it's the case of, it's always the case of these things, man. It's the fucking,
Yeah,
it's getting
absolutely.
the tech to work.
But and do you know what? That first one that we recorded, probably the best podcast ever that no one will ever hear.
Oh god, yeah. There's so much like vital information, so much stuff that will probably never be repeated.
Just lost forever. It was just pure genius.
The lost tapes. Yeah, the lost tapes. To be honest, I couldn't even tell you what we talked about during that hour, if I'm being honest. Like, I have absolutely no idea. It was just an hour of rambling, pretty much just an hour of random crap.
Yeah, I think so. So I think, let's try and introduce ourselves. Let's
sure.
Sort of say where we are at the moment and why we're doing this, I think.
Yeah.
So,
you crack on then, Dave.
Crack on, Dave. Yeah. Cool. So basically, I think the idea really behind us doing this podcast is that we're both on this kind of ever-going fitness journey, and I guess we both just want to learn along the way and continue to learn along the way and share that info with other people. For me, I've been involved in fitness for a long time, 20 plus years, decent-ish level and at a consistent level. And I think that the way I trained 20 years ago compared to the way that I train today is very, very different. And I think that the way that I'll probably be training in 5, 10, 15, 20 years time will probably be very different to the way that I'm training now. So it's really about just exploring that evolution of training and what's going on outside, what's going on around us, just seeing what I can use and that kind of thing. And just increasing my knowledge and sharing that knowledge as we go along.
Yeah, cool. Brilliant.
Yourself?
I would say, what sort of sports have you been involved in over that time? I mean, I know. So
I think so. My sporting career started off when I was probably about 15 or 16, and I was playing rugby. So when I was that age, I was a huge lump. So you obviously know me in real life, but back then I weighed probably about 15 stone, and I was a prop for my local and county rugby team. So I was playing at a fairly decent level at that time. And then what I won't do is deep dive too much into my sort of history, because I'm sure we'll pick up that on other sessions.
Yeah, sure.
But from there, in the background, I'd always been doing martial arts. And I kind of made this decision that was the route for me. So basically what I did was kind of dumped rugby on the head, really at that time when you kind of leave school, because that was kind of when county and all that starts to end. And I realized that if I was going to go into adult rugby, that everyone was massive. Yeah, and it probably wasn't for me. So, I moved into training martial arts closer to full time at that point. So I was training Muay Thai. I had quite a few fights by that point, and I guess just being around that gym environment led me to moving in towards grappling, MMA, that kind of thing. And then to kind of cut a long story short there, I progressed into training MMA full time, competing at MMA at a fairly decent level, certainly at a UK and European level, was kind of consistently getting ranked in the sort of top 10 lightweight or featherweight. At one point got down to like top 3 UK featherweight. So doing okay for myself. Skip forward kind of as that career started to end, as I got a little bit older and got fed up with getting punched in the face so much. I kind of transitioned into running, which was a painful transition, if I'm honest, because for ages I didn't want to admit that I enjoyed running and I was actually any good at it. It was always just something I did in the background to stay fit. Just you've got to get your cardio in, so get your miles in the morning. And I guess that led me to kind of transition into trail running into ultra running, and then probably over the last 3 or 4 years more into obstacle course racing. So Spartan races, and within that I've kind of taken like some of the kind of age group victories, taken quite a few podiums, that kind of thing. Currently training for London Marathon, which would be my first kind of attempt really at a marathon PR. So I've done that distance plenty of time within ultra, but I'm actually now specifically just trying to drill down and train for that marathon PR. But I've already distracted myself from it by signing up for the entire Spartan Race National Series this year. So I'm already thinking past that race because that's kind of like where I'm going to kind of do well. The London Marathon is just going to be a case of going out and getting a PR, whereas the Spartan races is like I've actually got a chance of like standing on the podiums and taking home some extra awards and things like that. Yeah. So I think that's kind of where I am at the moment. Throughout that whole process, just got myself down from 15 stone at the age of 15, 16 down to like what I am now, which is I'm probably at the moment about 72 kilos strong. So I continue, even with all the running, continue to whack out like at least 3 strength sessions a week. Those at the moment are pretty dull, if I'm honest. It's literally just simple lifting. Yeah. Squat, deadlift, and variations of those and overhead press work. Just because I don't want to get injured going into a race, and obviously I just want to be strong. So yeah, that's kind of where I am at the moment. Just to add to that, throughout that journey as well, I've kind of dabbled a little bit in the kind of hybrid racing as well. So kind of put some Hyroxes in and that kind of thing. So just kind of playing with those a little bit, which again did really well on those. Had a top 20 finish, but I think the disadvantage is the fact that I'm only walking around about on any day between 70 or 74 kilos, whereas most of the guys there are like 85, 90 kilos, which play, even though I'm a better runner than them, it plays to a massive advantage when it comes to the strength stuff, like or whatever it might be. So yeah.
Nice. Cool. Well, I guess my fitness journey thus far is a lot shorter. I didn't start, I did a lot of sports as a child, but then I discovered Call of Duty and then spent several years playing that.
I definitely had a distraction in there when I discovered girls. So
yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, for me it was Call of Duty. That was my goals. It wasn't until I was like, I guess 20, 21 years old that I actually started going to the gym and stuff. And it just started as like one of those things where like you're insecure about the way you look and you just want to look a bit better. So I sort of spent the next, let's say, 3 or 4 years kind of doing it on and off, not always being super consistent with it. But then I started to get more and more into it a little bit more. And then I started thinking like, I'd be in the gym and I'd see like other personal trainers and stuff doing that job. I was like, I think that's kind of a job I'd like to do. So I spent it took me a while. There was times where I had doubts whether I wanted to do it or not. It was a long story, but so I spent the next like 2 or 3 years gaining all the qualifications I needed. And it started really, really just the more involved with it I got, the more I started falling in love with it and just learning as much as I could. So I finally got all my qualifications together, and I've obviously just recently been hired properly as a personal trainer, just starting on my journey now. So I'm kind of in a position now where I've spent a lot of time learning, but I haven't necessarily applied a lot of that yet. So I'm in a position now where I'm just trying to gain as much practical experience as I can. In terms of where my own fitness journey is fitted into that, I've spent a lot of years flip-flopping around between different stuff because I enjoy so many different things. I've spent so many years jumping around different disciplines that I've never gotten really very good at anything.
Yep.
It isn't until kind of the past 6 months where I've decided that like climbing is what I love the most. So I've now thrown all my energy into that, and I'm absolutely, the more I do that, the better I get at it, and the more I love it. It's what I spend half my time thinking about these days. All my training like is geared towards that. Even stuff I always make sure I cover other grounds, but it's always geared towards getting better at climbing, really. So yeah, right now I've just started as a personal trainer, trying to gain as much experience as I can. And yeah, climbing is the discipline that I follow myself, but I love, as you say, you're the same. I love all kinds of disciplines. There's not an area of fitness that doesn't interest me.
That's exactly the same for me. So yeah. I think that for me, fitness is a general thing. I want to be fit for life.
Yeah,
I want to be able to get up every day and walk around, run around, see my mates, best around my kids, whatever it might be. I want to be fit enough to do all of those things. And I think that's why I'm probably the same as you. I've gone from rugby to Muay Thai to MMA to running. The reason I kind of got into running, although like I said, it took me a while to admit that I was okay at it, is because I'm a competitive person, so I had to find something that I could actually compete in as well. So whilst I want this fitness to do something day to day, to be fit and healthy day to day, and to get through life easily. There's also, I have that just ingrained in me that I want to compete, and I don't even know if I want to compete with other people. I just want to compete with myself, especially as I'm getting older and things like that. And I want to still sort of prove to myself that I can do these things. And that's kind of where the running kind of came into it. It's like, I know that I'm never going to go to a powerlifting meet, for example, and sort of beat people, but I kind of looked for something that I could do. Now, running was great, trail running especially, and I got to a good level at that. But there was always something missing, and that's where the kind of obstacle course racing came in, where it's like, well, I can actually apply some fitness to this as well, and some strength to it. So you've got the running element, then you've got the strength elements, and then you've got just moving your body and all of that kind of thing. And it kind of tied in with my training a lot better.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, is with me and climbing, it's just a case of like, it was the one thing, like I was already, the one sport I've ever done I've always been like quite naturally okay at. So I already was in a quite good position when I started. And I think it's satisfying, I think, and it's the fact that it's full body. The strength it requires, I just find, is so interesting. It never gets boring to me, because there's always a different boulder problem. There's always a different route that requires something you've never, more or less, maybe never done before. Like every route that you do is unique, so it just never gets boring.
So do you think there, where you kind of said it's like satisfying, do you think that's because you can see progression, and then obviously as you progress, like you say, you can try these different things?
And also the individual problem itself, like you start at the bottom and you've got to get to the top, right? Like that's like, and there's a problem solving aspect to that. Like it's not always like, you don't always turn up and do it first time. So a route could take you 20 tries, because you have to spend that time like figuring out exactly where you have to position your body, your hands, your feet, to be able to get to the top. That's what I fucking love about it. Is like, it's the problem solving aspect. It's not all physical. There is a thought process to a lot of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something I really love about the obstacle course racing. Is it's like, when I first started trail running, I could go out and do a trail run, and I'd still come in good places, generally within the top 10 of the races I was entering, but I could actually just stick my AirPods on and just run it and forget about it. In the obstacle course racing, you know that within every K that you run, you're going to be having to hit an obstacle, and you're going to have to get through that obstacle as quickly as possible. Some of them pretty basic. Some of them actually do consider some kind of thought process. And I think that's the big thing about it, is you stay mentally engaged. I think that's a massive part of the kind of fitness thing that most people sort of miss out on, is that you actually need to remain sort of physically and mentally engaged with what you're doing, which obviously is what you're getting from your climbing there.
Right. Yeah, no, 100%. It's just fun on it, and at the end of the day, it has to be fun. Like if it's not fun, like what's the fucking point? Like if you're not really enjoying it, like you're not going to sustain it.
I get this all the time. So a lot of my friends just cannot get their head around obstacle course racing, and they're just like, dude, all you're doing is doing like playground stuff. It's monkey bars with a bit of running. It's like, it's so much fun.
That's so much fun. Yeah.
It's like, I could go out, I could do a race, potentially make a little bit of money, and I've been dicking around on the monkey bars. It's like, I'm more than happy. That makes me smile on a Sunday morning.
To be fair, that's the kind of race that I would definitely be tempted by, as one of those kind of things. I mean, even if just for fun, like I'd love to go with a bunch of people, and even if it was just like a 5K with some obstacles, would be like those inflatable ones, look so fun,
so good. So
just to laugh.
In August, there's a Spartan race literally about 3 miles away from where we live. So I'm obviously doing the early morning elite race. It's like 8 or 8:30 start or something like that. But in the afternoon, there's the open. Let's do it. 5K
that
open.
would be funny.
Let's just go and have a laugh.
Yeah. Hopefully, I know I've got some plans in August, but if it works out that I'm not away during that time, that would be sick.
That'd be a good.
Yeah, that would be hilarious.
Like say,
I don't. My aerobic fitness is not what it was, but it's still. I mean, if it's a short thing, if it's like a shorter thing, it'd be fine.
Because
that's no problem. Yeah.
In the morning, I've got the 21K, like say, elite race, but then in the afternoon, we'll just do the open 5K and
just piss around 5K. Yeah. Just piss around.
It'll probably take longer to do the 5K than I will to do the
21. Yeah. No, that'd be jokes.
But yeah,
Yeah, I'd
let's
love
do
to do
it.
one of
Because
those.
again, for me, it's just good fun, good practice, and to
Yeah,
laugh with
yeah.
your mates.
It's a social thing more than anything. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, so I guess you kind of mentioned then, like, your aerobic fitness isn't where it's been.
yeah.
We know it has been better. So what have you done in the past then? That's
I guess, well, I mean, I just used to do a lot of running for like a while. Like running was a big part of what I did for a while. I'm not sure, to be honest, I'm not sure why I started. At the time when I started it, I wanted to do something that I hated at the time. I was like, I want to do something that I really don't like to do. And like over that time, I developed a bit of like a love-hate relationship with it. Like,
yeah,
I loved it for some days and I hated it other days. Obviously, it's the same with most training, to be honest. But like, and I was training. I did a marathon and I got that done, and then I did a 4x4x48. I got that done, and now I've kind of feel like I'm done with like running challenges. So like since then, I haven't really. So I'm still training like 6 days a week, but like I just don't. When with work and stuff being mad busy, I don't really have the time to do that long aerobic stuff anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like my cardio these days has gone down to like doing intervals and stuff like twice a week. Like my cardio just isn't what it was, just because I just don't have the time or the schedule like to do it anymore, or as much I care either.
It's that's the other thing. It's like if you don't care and you're at the right level for the sport that you're currently enjoying, i.e. the climbing.
Yeah, right. That's the thing with climbing. Like I only need to be like, if I'm doing bouldering, I only need to be really on for about at maximum a minute and a half, 2 minutes maybe. That's a long boulder. So like if I can be really good for like a minute, which is more anaerobic anyway, that's
absolutely
more the fitness I want to go into anyway. Like I don't need like, I mean, with the aerobic stuff generally, like I haven't done bouldering is generally what I've done more of, but obviously I might have to push that a little bit when I start to do a bit more sport climbs that will be a bit longer. Like if I want to do routes down the line that are like, you know, could take you 10-20 minutes to do the whole route.
Yes.
So to that degree, I might need to push that a little bit more, but for right now, like it's fine. Like I don't need that creep. I don't need aerobic. Yeah, I don't. I think it's weird though, because I would advocate for a lot of reasons for different sports to have a little bit of an aerobic base.
100%.
But right now I just can't fit it in. And as I say, I've done a lot of it in the past year and a half and I'm just a bit bored of it.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing as well. It's like, I've said this to so many people over the years, is that there's something out there for everyone that gets your heart rate up and gets your body moving. So for me at the moment, especially with the marathon, I'm going through a big running block. I'm whacking out a lot of Ks every week. I can't wait till the marathon's over because I don't necessarily want to be running all those Ks every week. But I can stay engaged with it because I've got that coming up. Now I appreciate that for you, for example, that could be your ideal of hell. So then don't do it.
Right.
Why do it? Why not find the thing that you enjoy, that makes you happy, that gets you moving? And obviously, like you said, it's
right.
in this case. For somebody else, they might look at a bouldering wall and just go, that looks like hell to me. I want to go swimming. Then you go swimming.
Right. Like go swimming then.
It's like you don't have to do what other people are doing. You don't have to, I don't know, watch the Boston Marathon that's coming up, look at Kipchoge and go, right, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to run a marathon. If you hate running, you might enjoy watching it, but you might hate running it. Then just go find the thing that you enjoy. You
enjoy
that sport as a spectator.
There's a sport for everyone. I really believe that.
Yeah.
And I think it's important, although I do think it is important to like, because I've spoken to people in the gym, like customers and stuff, and they come in and they'd be like, we do a check on the scales and see where their muscle mass is at. And like, I've had it with people where they've like lost maybe a little bit of muscle mass and they'll be like, oh, that's strange because I do so much. I do like all this time on the treadmill and all this time swimming and stuff. Yeah, it's like, but that's a different thing. Like muscle mass requires strength stuff and actual weightlifting. It could be a case of stuff that climbing would retain some of your muscle because you're using strength,
because you're using absolutely
you do need both. So if you just did swimming, you're not necessarily going to have the benefits that you'd have on the other side. You kind of you might I think somewhere in your training, at least at some point, it doesn't have to be initially, especially if you're just getting started, you do need to balance things out and you might have to do something that you don't want to do.
I agree with that.
It is annoying, but like at the end of the day, for the sake of health and longevity and like whatever, And you might learn to enjoy it. How many things have you done in the past that you used to hate and now you enjoy? Like it's one of those things.
It's that thing, isn't it? That I think if you eat the same piece of food that you hate, is it like 20 or 22 times or something
like that?
You
yeah.
develop a taste for it. But I definitely, going back to that point, is I get this all the time. So I rigidly do a minimum of 3 good strength sessions a week, and I lift good in those, and I know exactly what I'm going to do at any one time. Now, if I'm not training for something specific, I'm going to be a little bit more relaxed on that. Not relaxed as in I'll be missing them, but a little bit more relaxed in what I'm doing in those sessions. Take a few more risks, that kind of thing. However, I get this all the time. People are kind of like, "Oh, dude, like you're training for a half marathon, you're training for a marathon, you're training for an ultra. Like, why are you still doing strength?" And it's like, it's so essential. I need a strong body. It's like, I can't go run 42K on a weak body. The other thing is I do have trouble retaining weight. So if I just went out and ran 100, let's say 150, 160K a week and did no strength and didn't consume those extra calories, for example, then I'm going to be down to like 60, 61 kilos in no time. And then that has its own negative impact on my body and my mental state as well, if I'm honest, and so on. And it's like, you really do have to find that balance. And I've got myself into a good place where I've educated myself enough that I understand the minimum amount of strength training I need to do to retain weight and the minimum number of sort of kilometers I need to run each week to get to my goal for that week without sort of making it detrimental to my recovery as well.
It comes with experience, really, doesn't it?
And I think that absolutely comes with experience. I know people that are training for marathons at the moment, and they're probably putting in like double the kilometers a week that I am. Now, bearing in mind, I'm up to sort of like the best part of 100K a week at the moment, which is a lot of kilometers. But between sessions, those guys are blasted. Like they don't want to do anything else. And again, I've got this massive kind of thing that, like, I don't think you're moving into overtraining, but I think what you do is you move to this point where each session has a detrimental effect on the next one. And that's where you don't want to be. And again, like you say, it comes with education, it comes with understanding. And that goes right back to what you said just now, where right at the beginning, just understand how it all works. People do need to just not blindly go swimming or not blindly go running, expecting to look like the Hulk the next week. And that kind of thing. And it's the same thing. And I'm sure you probably hear it a lot, being a PT, is kind of things like, people, like, especially I guess females, kind of worrying that it's like, oh, am I going to get bulky if I lift weights, or is this going to happen?
Oh God, that infuriates me.
I've lifted weights.
It's not how it works.
No, I've lifted weights pretty much consistently for probably 15 years plus, and like, I guess for my weight, I'm muscular. I'm certainly strong for my weight, but I am not some huge jacked beast.
Yeah, you hear that all the time. People, especially, it's more of a thing with women. It's like when you tell them it's important to lift weights, it's like, but I don't want to bulk up. It's just like, do you know how fucking hard it is to build muscle? Really fucking hard. These bodybuilders you see, I've been doing it for like 15 years, day in, day out, to get to that shape with the assistance of certain extra products a lot of the time. So it's like, it's not easy. But it's very, very important. It's not even. I'm not even necessarily trying to make you look. I'm not trying to make you look more muscly. I'm trying to build up strength in your joints and like all this kind of stuff. That's it's nuts.
A lot of it is about bulletproofing and making yourself.
Bulletproofing. Exactly.
And I think this is probably definitely something that we could dive into a lot deeper, because we know that this conversation is just going to be talking, just seeing what comes out.
Pretty much.
I think as we start to do our future ones, we're going to like just pick a topic and we're going to dive into that properly. And I think there is an absolute thing there that we can kind of look at, which is just that whole kind of miseducation of things, that misunderstanding of things. I think that's a really big thing.
I think the problem, where a lot of that kind of ideology comes from, is the marketing of how people market other products, in terms of 100%. Saying that, like, it's the way people market things are in like 6 and 8 week blocks. No one can market something like, oh, get jacked in 3 years. Do you know what I mean? No one's going to market stuff like that. No one would buy it. But that's the reality. Is like, there is no 6-week ad program that fucking it's nuts.
If I
so they think everything's quick.
yeah, and then I decided I was going to be a bodybuilder tomorrow, and I'm going to consume all the extra calories. I'm going to dump all the cardio. I don't think that by the end of April, I'm ready to step on a
No,
stage. Like,
no,
it just
how
does
no?
not
Yeah,
work like that, and it takes
yeah,
so
yeah,
long. And I think that consistency is a really big thing. And I think there's this huge mistake that everyone makes is there's this kind of picture of fitness, having a six pack, being X size, etc., etc. And I think again that's another thing that we should absolutely look in. I think it goes into the same thing. It's the whole marketing of things. Now, some of the fittest guys I know don't look fit. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
However,
yeah.
if you go and look on Instagram for etc., the people that people are going to be tagging as looking fit and healthy are going to be like 3% body fat. You see every single ab. You can just see every little vein. It's like there's a good chance that those guys are so far from fit. It's unbelievable. Ask them
Yeah,
to
yeah,
run a K, they probably won't be able to. And I think there's that huge misconception about what fit is and what fitness looks like. And again, I
yeah,
think it goes back to that miseducation that people don't understand what being fit is. They don't understand that lifting a weight doesn't suddenly turn you into Arnold, for example.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think just going backtrack, there was one thing I wanted to bring up on the previous point we were talking about in terms of like people
Yeah.
balancing out aerobic stuff and strength stuff. There was this really, really fascinating study done, right? There's these two sets of twins, right? One of the twins has been doing, I think they're both in like their 50s or 60s.
Yep.
One of the twins has been doing like aerobic fitness like their whole life. So like ultras, triathlons, all this kind of shit,
Yep.
but zero strength stuff, like zero. Like all he did was cardio related stuff, really intense cardio. I think it turned out like his fiber type proportion was like 95% type 1, which
Yep.
is nuts. And then he had a twin who basically did like nothing at all. So like no fitness whatsoever. And when they tested like the strength, the twin who did nothing actually was stronger than the twin who did the cardio stuff because of like more, I think it had more to do with like the fiber type distribution. But that's
Yeah, absolutely.
so fascinating that even though like the twin who did nothing still had stronger legs in certain exercises. So it's just so weird that, but I think it's more the point of pointing out the person who did more the fitness stuff, how important balancing out the strength it actually is.
100%.
You need both. You can still have something that's dominant. You just need complementary stuff to just balance things out a little bit.
Really, really do. And another point, just to add to that, there's been quite a few of these kind of twin studies.
Yeah, that's so fascinating.
I might have read that one. I've definitely seen others as well. And one of the key points that I've seen, and I thought this might have been the route you were going down, but it wasn't, is that I've seen a study where you had two guys that were twins. They basically got them on two totally different types of training routines. And throughout that entire period, they were looking at body comp, they were looking at obviously muscle mass, increased strength, etc., all the basic sort of statistics you would like to collect. And obviously along the way, they were photographing them as well. And at the end of like this 12-week study, physically, there's no visual change in either person. However, obviously one of them's got a better aerobic capacity and the other one's obviously got a stronger capacity because obviously they're going off on down different routes. But it goes back to that whole point of you kind of can't beat your genetics in some cases. These guys were predisposed to look a certain way. And after one of them being on a cardio only 12-week program and one of them being on a strength only 12-week program, there's visually no difference between them. They'd obviously made individual gains in both those areas. However, once they went back to their normal training and they were on a more balanced program, because I mean, these guys came from an athletic background anyway, it took a very short period of time before they were both completely balanced with each other. And it just proves that whole point that a lot of the time it is down to genetics and it is understanding exactly what your body is capable of.
I think VO2 max as well. I was reading the other day. I think there's like 90. They've roughly estimated there's about 95 genetic components that go into VO2 max, which is pretty nuts. So like you can have a genetic disposition to VO2 max. I mean, I think where we really see what genetics actually play a part is in the top echelon of athletes, of where that difference actually is. I think in day-to-day life, you don't really notice it in the common population. It becomes when it's like there's just some athletes who are just better than everyone else. Like they just are.
I'm probably going to use this person's name a lot as we talk, and that's Eliud Kipchoge, who's obviously put in the 2-hour marathon. The greatest marathon runner of all time, just undoubtedly. However, it's so genetic. the guy's body doesn't produce lactate until it gets to a certain threshold that a normal person just can't even comprehend. Like our bodies simply do not work and do not process in the same way. And that's the case with all of these elite guys, like guys that are putting in like half marathon in 57 minutes. Now, I know people that getting a 1 hour 10K would be a struggle for them, and that's not an issue, that's not a problem. Like, fair play, like you're doing a 10K and I respect you for that, but trying to understand like how physically capable somebody is to do 21.5K in 57 minutes is just obscene.
That's bonkers.
And then to be putting out those kind of times over a marathon distance, it does not make sense.
It doesn't compute.
It goes down to genetics. There's no doubt about it. These people are just simply built different. I think obviously again.
Sorry, to make a climbing reference for this, Alex Honnold, who did the free solo, right? His 100%. Like amygdala doesn't work the same way as everyone else's. Like, he just doesn't feel fear like everyone else does. I don't know if that's partly nature, but I think there's partly nurture. Sorry, but I don't. There must be a nature component in the hardwiring of his brain to like make it that way.
Absolutely. I've seen studies, and I think I might have mentioned this to you before, where they've taken extreme sports athletes and they put them in extreme situations and they put heart rate monitors on them to see what happens. And they're still producing a lower heart rate than most people have sat at a desk. Right. Their bodies just work differently. They process fear in a different way. And so on. And again, there's so many interesting things there to look at. And I think even going back to the fighting, there was always people like always say to me, it's like, are you nervous? Like, are you not terrified? And it's like, no, I don't see it like that. For me, going out there and competing in MMA or Muay Thai, whatever it might have been, it was always kind of like, I kind of equated it to like a footballer trying to score a goal. I was just going out there to win my specific sport. There was never fear in I might get hurt, I might get hit in the face.
That's what people see though, but once you've done it enough, like you've done it, it becomes a point where you've done it so many times, and that's not it's competition at the end of the day.
Like I never like people always like, oh, do you hate those people? It's like, no, we just want to like you see like, people embrace after their fight, they congratulate each other. I appreciate at the UFC level there is a lot of bravado beforehand. They have to hype things.
It's marketing.
And I'm sure a few people actually hate each other as well. But like generally most people like each other. We're normal guys. It's just the sport we've chosen, and it's just the sport we want to go out and do well in. I was always more nervous cornering somebody because I'm not in physical control of what that person can do in the cage. Whereas when I'm in the cage or I was in the ring, I had control over what was happening. I was in control of the situation. And I guarantee that my heart would have been lower during an MMA competition than it would cornering somebody else because it's out of my control. So going back to like Alex Horn, sorry, is it Horn?
Alex Honnold.
Honnold. Yeah. I think Alex Horn's Taskmaster. Totally different.
Alex Honnold on Taskmaster, bro. That would be
serious kudos in his climbing ability. So I think it goes back to this, is like he's in control of that situation. Every mistake is on him. Same with these extreme sports guys. It's like they're in control of what's happening and they're reacting to things in a certain way and they're doing things a certain way, but it's all being produced by them. Nobody else is kind of factoring into that. And I think that's a lot of where this kind of plays into it, is that self-control and that self-belief, and just again understanding what your body is physical of. I'm physically capable of. Sorry. Cool, absolute tangent there, but
no. Well, I mean, we didn't have an original topic to tangent off. But this is like the weirdest flowchart.
I think there's definitely some things that we'll start talking about and we'll start diving into, sort of picking.
I mean, I don't know if you want to. Maybe we should. I don't know if you've got the list up, but we did make a massive list of topics we will go into in future. I don't know if you want to just rattle some of those off. Just so stuff to like.
Where did I put them?
It was in a spreadsheet, wasn't it?
In a spreadsheet, wasn't it? Yeah.
The spreadsheet, But I mean, it was this stuff like, but I think, definitely going to the top echelon of athletes. I think there's only like so many different like training modalities you can implement. There's some point, there's only so much you can do, I think, as like a physical adaptation level, to the point where like there's all the best strength and conditioning coaches in the world, right? They get paid a fortune to do their job, like the Olympic coaches and all this kind of things. They've all had more or less had the same teaching at some point. I mean, you could make a case that like obviously the Russians during the 20th century, they were way ahead of everyone else for a long time because they basically invented periodization, right?
Yeah.
But then everyone obviously started adopting that. But I think there is only so much you can do at like a physical adaptation level. There comes a point where it's a mental game. Like how can the person handle pressure? And all these kind of other factors that go into it. Like, you know, like there's a point where, and then there's also the genetic component as well, where like some people like John Jones in MMA, he's just better than everyone else. Like I'm sure he's not necessarily doing something in his training that's just like way different from everyone else.
Yeah, there's no magic bullet there.
No, he just is better than everyone else. Like, so it's just one of those things.
I completely agree with that. It's like I could go out today and I could emulate any number of people's training. Let's say I went out today and I started emulating Kipchoge's training. In the summer, I'm not running a 2-hour marathon. That's that.
Yeah.
Like it does not work like that. At 70 kilos or 72 kilos, where I am at the moment, I could go and take, I know, some Russian weightlifters training program, apply the percentages against myself, and I guarantee you, I still do not make an elite powerlifter. It simply doesn't work like that. And I think it goes back to the whole thing about just understanding what works for you. We all respond to different things in different ways. I naturally have a low heart rate. However, especially my resting heart rate, it gets very low. But no matter how much aerobic work I do, no matter how much base work I do, my heart rate is only ever going to get down to a certain point. It's never every training block I do just going to get lower and lower and lower.
Yeah.
It's predisposed to work at a certain way. And this is even something that even when I'm not at my fittest, is still something that I'm just predisposed to have. So probably going back about 7 or 8 years ago, I broke my foot and I had to have surgery on it. I wasn't at my fittest at that point, but I almost couldn't have surgery because my heart rate is just naturally lower. And there was a concern about obviously having a low heart rate and going under anesthetic, for example. Luckily, it was all okay. But it's just something that genetically I'm predisposed to have. It comes from my mum. My mum has the same thing. She's got a naturally low heart rate. If she gets up too quick, she wobbles everywhere and so on. But you have these other things that come with it. And that, again, is a factor into why I'm better at running than I am at other sports, or especially long distance running. I can go out and I can run. I can give you a great example of this, actually. I took Robin out for a 32.5K run at the weekend.
I saw you guys, by the way.
Oh, did
I drove past. Nice. Yeah, I drove past you guys. Yeah. I was trying to honk my horn, but it wasn't working for some reason. I wasn't hitting the right spot, but I was trying to honk my horn.
Towards the end, Robin was starting to swear at me a lot, but I'll take her out again on Saturday. But
we should have her on the podcast at some point.
Yeah, she's so much info, I think.
Yeah, she's so intelligent.
Her average heart rate towards the end of that, and I would class Robin as a very good runner, certainly better than the average runner. And she's looking to go in at, I think, about a 3.5-hour marathon, which is going to be fantastic.
Yeah.
Her average heart rate was in the 160s. My average heart rate at the end of that run was 117. It was just it's just naturally lower, and that's just how it goes. And that means that when it comes to events like an ultra, for example, it's just a better suited event for me because I can keep my heart rate low throughout the entire event and run at a decent pace. And it just, like I say, and then going back to the whole Kipchoge thing, where his body produces lactate at a much higher threshold than the average person, that means that he can actually start running at a high intensity of like 150, 160, 170 beats per minute and still not being able to produce lactate. For myself, where I've got that low heart rate, it does have its disadvantages when I start to get to those kind of thresholds, because I'm producing lactate at a lot lower threshold. I'm producing it when I'm getting to like 150, 160. Yeah, which is like Robin, for example, run her 32.5K at 160 average heartbeat, but she obviously wasn't at her max because she continued to run it. So the genetics there plays a huge part in the type of sport you can do, the type of sport you're going to excel in, and so on. So yeah, there's again,
yeah,
a bit of a tangent, but there's so many things that
of course a definitely obviously nature does play a part, but there is also definitely a nurture aspect for sure. Like there is stuff that you do during your childhood that makes a difference. I think a really good case of this is like Lomachenko, right? Like how his dad pulled him out of boxing and stuck him in 4 years of dance. And then you look at him down the line in his boxing and his footwork is like unbelievable. Yeah, so I think there is certain things you can do. I think childhood plays a massive part.
There's
what did you do during the main part of your development as a person to like what you're going to be disposed to like down the line?
I absolutely agree with that. And I think something like that, using dancing as an example, it's taking, because that obviously does have an impact on your body physically and it is good and so on. However, you're learning a skill, and then you've got that mental capacity to be able to apply that skill to another sport, which essentially a lot of sports at their essence are skills. Like boxing, it's a skill, obviously, with other aspects attached to it. And I think that's a really, really key thing, is not just again, going back to the whole thing we talked about right at the beginning about the whole functional fitness and sort of training for everyday life. It is being able to take what works here and applying it over here, and so on and so on. And like that is a great example of that sort of thing.
Yeah,
cool. I have found that spreadsheet.
Wicked. I cannot remember for the life of me what's on it, but we'll see.
No,
to be fair, I think I put some stupid shit on it. I can't remember. I don't know if I put some dumb shit on there. But
I think we could probably blast out about 4 or 5 episodes on who the MMA GOAT is. There's no doubt about that.
We'll make a series. Yeah. Well, we both have our own opinion, don't we? Well,
we absolutely do, and I think that's probably a generational thing as well. So because obviously,
maybe.
Like for me, the sort of golden era of MMA was your Matt Hughes, your Carlos Newton, George St. Pierre, who, in my opinion, probably is the GOAT. If nothing else, on personality. Seems like a good guy. Jones is a little bit iffy in places.
Yeah, he's a couple of DUIs in his record.
However, I'm sure there's some good conversations to be had around that. But yeah, generally looking at this, I mean, we definitely kind of want to dive into deeper into our own training histories, our own training philosophies, that kind of thing. Something you've put on here, Nutribolics. So,
yeah, that'll be a good one. That's easy.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah, there's tons of stuff around there, kind of that we can look at, kind of everything. Like you've got BMI, low carb, low fat. Low fat is the one that annoys me more than anything. I just that word is such a negative word, yet it is actually such a positive word. It's like,
I hate the word diet. Period. I can't.
That
100%. Word in itself has so much applied to it. I can't stand it. I hate using it.
The word diet and the word fat, they have so many negative connotations to them unnecessarily. And again, I think a lot of that just goes back to education.
Yeah.
Sorry?
So carbs even have a bad rep a lot of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you honestly think I'm running like the best part of 100K a week on a low carb diet?
Low carb diet, yeah. It's literally what your brain uses for fuel is glucose.
Yeah, absolutely.
On a low carb diet, you are nuts. Yeah. That is nuts.
Something we've sort of touched on today, newbies. So where to start, training frequency, strength, cardio, setting goals, etc.
Yeah.
The flip side of that, something I know you've been getting involved in a little bit more, looking at elderly clients.
Yeah. That's something that I think I'm going to end up being my PT specialization. I think is going to be, I've just generally,
excellent.
I've done a lot of research into that recently, and it's half the clientele that we have in the gym anyway.
Yeah.
And I just find it really interesting, and I think it's a rewarding aspect of the job, because it's not like they're training to do an event. They're training just to improve their quality of life, or still be able to run around with their grandkids or get up the stairs on their own. You know what I'm saying?
To me, is
the
key reason for training.
Yeah, to make your life easier. Yeah,
absolutely. So I think there's some really interesting stuff then.
Yeah, definitely.
Going back to myself, I'm older than you, and I've been training for a long time. And my training now is completely, like I said at the very beginning, is very different to it was 20 years ago.
What, you 22, 23? What you're?
Yeah, I was only 2 or 3 years old when I first started training.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a savage.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I now have to like factor in recovery a lot more than I did. I have to factor in my rest and my sleep a lot more than I used to, and so on and so on. So there's a lot of things there, and I can see how as time goes on, I'm going to have to change that more. What else we've kind of put on here? Having a little look at some of the kind of fitness stuff that's out there in the real world. So one of the things we brought up was like the Physical 100 program. Just started. I think that'd be quite interesting. By the way,
I did finish.
Yeah. Did you finish watching? Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think we should have a good chat about it. I think we're past the point now of spoilers as well. So.
Oh fuck yeah! I mean, it's not like Game of Thrones or anything. I think anyone's like,
no.
Oh shit! Don't spoil Physical 100 for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, you know what I mean? So it'll be fine.
Yeah, we could quite easily say who won, and I'm pretty sure that most people would be like, "Well, who was that?" Yeah. So I don't think people are gonna. But I think there's something to dive into it, because there's some real key things that I brought out of that I took from that as well. And
really interesting. It's a good experiment. I really hope they do an English one. That would be amazing. Yeah.
I think that'd be fantastic to see. And I think we can like dive into a few other things. There's enough of these kind of types of things out there that we could probably have a look into them and dissect them a little bit. Say what we might have done or not done in those situations, and so on. What else have we got here? Exercise versus training. This is a key one for me. Right now, I'm training for something. I'm very focused on what I want to do. I've got to hit certain goals as I go along. And I'd really like to kind of look at that process about what happens the week after my marathon. Yeah, when I just go back into exercise, when I'm exercising now for the joy of it, as opposed to the goal of it, and that kind of thing. And also just kind of starting to understand how I stay engaged in that exercise. So a really big thing, and so many people do this. They go out there, they crush their half marathon. I'll use you as an example. You go there, you smash your marathon, and then you don't run again for a year.
I don't run again for
ever. Yeah,
I won't go back and do a 5K, and I'm like, fuck. Like, I was just like, I went back up 3 months. I was just, oh my god.
The first time I did an ultra, I passed the finish line, and I instantly went, I'm never doing that again. Within about 3 days, I was already looking at my next ultra. So there's definitely a mindset to these things, but just understanding that's the difference between exercise and training, that kind of thing. There's so much going on there.
Can we talk about why sumo deadlifting shouldn't be a thing? That'd be a great one. I could spend an hour talking about that. Why CrossFit pull-ups need to be fucking thrown in the bin. That's another one. Any like fad exercises that we hate? Yeah, no, we're not a fan of kipping here. Any fad exercises we just want to get rid of?
I don't want to rag on CrossFit too much, and I've done a lot of CrossFit over time.
Yeah, sure.
But I have a huge problem with kipping. I have a huge problem with kipping pull-ups, kipping muscle-ups. I understand maybe if you're going to use the kip to
for learning, I get
muscle up.
Yeah, I get it.
And I think there's some great things that come from CrossFit, and I think there's some less great things that come from it.
Talk about athletes in CrossFit. I mean, they are like athletes of all athletes. I mean, the multidiscipline aspect is so fascinating. Like having to be a jack of all trades in CrossFit is amazing. Like that's a trait, like a type of training that's just so unique that you can't focus on one discipline, otherwise you'll just get let down somewhere else.
Without going off on the CrossFit tangent too much, is the new breed of athletes that are coming through are actually CrossFit athletes, as opposed to the Rich Froning.
Matt Fraser was more. Matt Fraser. He was a lifter. He was Olympic. Yeah, he was Olympic lifter.
He was a high-level Olympic lifter.
Yeah.
So that's it. So these guys are coming from other disciplines, whereas now, and especially on the female side, they're definitely seeing a lot more pure CrossFit athletes, and they're really excelling because that's all they've ever done.
Yeah, right.
So it's quite interesting to see that, and I think there's absolutely something to go off down there. However, I know from spending time in a lot of CrossFit gyms, and I've got a friend who actually owns a CrossFit box, that even within the CrossFit community, they know what does and doesn't work. They work to their own program quite often, and the high level athletes are throwing certain things out to work on certain other core things, and that kind of thing. So there's the CrossFit that a lot of people associate with CrossFit, and then there's what the actual high level athletes are doing. Because don't for 1 minute think that, I don't know, somebody's going out there and they're doing this absolutely massive snatch in like the weightlifting event, that they're just learning to snatch like that just from going to a CrossFit box 3 times a week. They're absolutely not. Yeah, so there's a lot of other facets to it, and they're training like full-time athletes in each individual discipline. And we'll go back to MMA. When I was training full-time in MMA, I was training Thai, I was training jiu-jitsu, I was training wrestling. And then I would do MMA sparring, but I was training the individual components. And those guys are absolutely going off and doing that. And that's not what my mum would be doing if she went and joined a CrossFit box. She would just be doing the CrossFit classes, so on and so on. So there's definitely another angle to that that's worth talking about. What else have we got on there? But yeah, I agree with no kipping.
No kipping, please.
No kipping. Going on from what I said just now about the exercise versus training thing, dealing with boredom and burnout. Consistency is absolutely key, but even I get bored. Like, that's it. We all have our highs and our lows, and how do we deal with that? How have I stayed consistent for 20 years apart from when I've been injured, and that kind of thing. Dealing with injury, dealing with failure. There's so many cool things in here. Something you kind of mentioned earlier, just when you sort of said about the running, and that's balancing training with life. I think there's a huge.
That's a
how many times do we hear that? It's
I've got,
times that. Where do you find
it's when people? I hate it when people say like everyone's got the same 24 hours. It's like, no, we don't. No, we fucking don't. Me and you do not have the same 24 hours. Like,
nope.
You have a wife and children. I fucking don't, right? So
our
24 hours are not the same. Like,
nope.
So it's
I am
ridiculous
currently
when people say
training for
that.
a marathon. I have 2 children and I have a wife, and I've got to fit in life with that,
and a job and all that shit. So it's like, well,
exactly.
How is that going to work?
It does not work. The first question I say to anybody when this kind of comes up is, how much time do you watch TV in a day? And every single time. And if it's anything over 30 minutes, I'm like, well, then you've got time to work out some capacity.
Yeah, right. There is a prioritization aspect for sure. No, you are right.
Yeah, and I think that's an absolutely huge thing. Now I do that with recovery. People ask me that exact thing, like, how do you fit your recovery, your mobility work in, etc., etc. I'm the same as everyone. I love watching Netflix box sets. I love sitting down and watching a box set or a film, and I tend to also binge watch them. So I will just smash out a season of something in as short a time period as I possibly can. But whilst I'm doing that, instead of sitting on the sofa eating crisps, I'm usually on the floor stretching or foam rolling or getting a lacrosse ball into my joints and things like that. It's figuring out how I can multitask these things. And using my time a little bit better. So
time management is it's a big aspect of it.
There's absolutely ways that it can all be done. So again, huge tangent that we can kind of go off down there.
I definitely like to do a whole episode on just general like muscle growth and hypertrophy for sure, because that's obviously like half the industry is that, and I've spent a lot of time reading into that. It's something, I mean, it's just like, it's one of those things. I mean, there's half the people that come to the gym just want to get bigger and swole, right? Like there's nothing wrong with that at all. There's nothing wrong with that at all. So I definitely would like to dive into, because there's a lot of principles I think people would definitely benefit from. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions around that, because it is probably the biggest part of the industry, you could argue.
Of course.
There's a lot of shit. And so I think digging through some of that would be really good for some people.
I think as well, that goes right back to what we sort of said right at the very beginning there, where, like you say, most people want to go to the gym, they want to get absolutely swole, they want to look a certain way. And it goes right back to that initial marketing misconception of, it looks like this. Be attracted to the opposite sex because you look like this.
Right.
So I think there's tons of stuff in there, and especially, I know obviously we both work out in the same gym. The client, a lot of the kind of clients there are obviously, like you say, higher age range, or there's a lot of people at the moment that are those late teens moving into their early 20s, very influenced by Instagram and social media and that kind of thing, and they're all trying to look and be a certain way. Something else that I'd like to dive into, and this probably is going to be something that you might or might not be interested in, is just bullshit fitness advice, bullshit PTs. Just that I had to last week train in a different gym to usual, and right next to me was it was a Saturday afternoon, and it was a guy who was selling himself as being a PT. And first of all, okay, I do appreciate that. I've already said that looking and being fit are two different things. However, you probably, if you're a PT, maybe need to market yourself slightly around what you're selling, if I'm being polite.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, but it was the advice that he was giving this person, telling them they had really good form, when it's like, well, your back is just rounded and you're asking for an injury. One of the exercises, he said, right, we're going to get you to do pendlay rows now. And the girl actually replied and went, oh, what's a pendlay row? And he went, oh, I don't know. I've just always called them that. And she then carried on to continue to do like a normal bent over row. And he was like, brilliant, we'll keep those up. And he kept referring to them as pendlay rows. And it's just kind of like the advice you're giving is you don't understand what you're teaching at this point.
Yeah, right. It's funny. It's so ironic because that exercise is literally named after what you're doing. Like it's a bent over row, right? Yeah. It's literally what you're doing. It's not called a skull crusher or anything. It's literally a bent over row.
Yeah. Exactly. And it was when the girl went, so why is it called a pendlay row? And he just went, oh, I don't know. That's why I've always called it that. And in my head, I almost just wanted to go, first of all, you're not doing a pendlay row. Secondly, it's named a pendlay row because a powerlifter called Glenn Pendlay changed the variation, etc., etc. And it's just kind of like, I don't know. There's a lot of charlatans in the fitness industry, whether it's PTs, whether it's Instagram, whether it's whatever it might be.
It's so also fine to not know something. If you don't know something, don't make up some shit. There's so much shit that I don't know, but I will happily, if someone asks me a question I don't know the answer, I'm not going to give them a false answer. I will be like, okay, I'm not sure. Let me find out for you. And then if anything, I then go and research and then I find more out for myself anyway. So it's like, it's part of that learning curve. One of the biggest ones I see is RDL and SLDL. People always call them different things, and that kind of annoys me. RDL and SLDL are two completely different things. And RDL is a glute lengthening exercise with a little bit of hamstring, and the SLDL is for your hamstrings. It's one of those things you always see people calling like, that always infuriates me.
They just cross them over. I think there's just things, there's just so many things down there where there's just a basic education. But exactly what you've just said there, me and you don't know everything. We are on.
No, of course not. Hence the name of the podcast.
Hence the name
of the podcast.
I want to learn as much as possible from this experience as you do. And I want to continue my growth. I've already said that I know in 5 years' times I'm going to be training. Probably by the end of this year, I'll be training differently to how I started the year. Well, I know I will because I started the year training for a marathon. I started last year training for a high rocks. So my training last year was very different to this year. There is just going to be that continual evolution, that continual change. But I'm the same as you. If I don't know something, I don't know it. I just put my hand up.
Yeah, it's fine.
I either learn from the person.
You got to humble yourself.
Or I go off and find out for myself.
Find out. Yeah.
So there's a lot of that out there. And to be fair, I did wonder Sunday morning how that girl's back felt because it was literally.
That's the thing. Like I think there is too much of. I mean, this is a whole. You could talk about a whole episode of this. I think there is a bit too much of an emphasis on.
We'll cut this bit out.
Sure. No problem.
Special delivery?
Yeah, cool.
Campbell, yeah?
Yeah, thank you very much. I need to sign for that. Nice one, thank you. Sorry, mate.
I think we should leave that in. That's hilarious.
It's my birthday Monday, so I'm guessing it's some.
Oh, is it?
I didn't know my mum. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
There you go.
I would say what I was going to say was we could do a whole episode on technique. To be fair, in certain because I think there is a little bit too much of an emphasis. To be honest, on the whole neutral spine philosophy. I don't think it's too much of an issue as people make it out to be, because everyone lifts a little bit differently. Certain things like knee valgus when squatting isn't as bad as people think it is. There's certain rounding when deadlift isn't as a problem people think. The biggest problem in terms of injury is load management is the biggest one.
100%.
It's managing load and adjusting gradually, not jumping up in like 10 kilo increments every time, and also making sure you're lifting in like a controlled manner. Those are two biggest things that are going to make sure you don't get injured. Controlling the weights and load management.
The weight management is a huge one. The amount of times I've just seen people rack on a whole load of weight, and then you end up with exactly the two things that we've said there, and causing these problems with themselves. Now, let's say my training this afternoon, I want to go out and I want to do 150 kilo deadlift. I'm probably going to start at 50 kilos.
Yeah, right.
And I'm going to work my way up to that. I'm not just going to stick 150k on the bar and start lifting.
No,
because I actually really like having a body that works.
Yeah,
it's just madness.
But then you need to warm your nervous system up to it as well. Like you can't, your body, if your PR is 100 kilos, doesn't mean you can then go in and lift 100 kilos immediately. That's not how it works.
No. So we can, and you can relate that to so many things, like fighters. They cut weight. Most 70k lightweight fighters don't weigh 70 kilos day to day. They're that moment
for the fight,
if your deadlift is 100 kilos, it's 100 kilos that moment that you lifted it. It's not 100 kilos every single time. I said this in our lost tapes. Thor Bjornsson, we know that the deadlift record sits with him. He lifted it once, and there's a very good chance he will never lift that ever again. But he will always be known for lifting that deadlift. Every time he walks into the gym, he doesn't pick up a bar and crack out that weight.
No.
My 5k PR is my 5k PR. It's not the time that I go out and run it every single time I run a 5k. And if I was going to go out and run a 5k and try and PR it, I would probably do about 30 to 45 minutes of running beforehand to get my body ready for it. Like, again, education and misunderstanding. There's a lot there to probably unpick and dive into, I think.
I mean, I think we covered a lot in this one. So
I think we probably talked a lot. I think what we'll start doing then is just picking the topic and diving in.
Just diving in from now on, pretty much. And then obviously inevitably tangenting at some point. But that's fine. We'll try and keep on track as we can. But
perfect.
Okay.
I'm happy with that.
Cool.
We'll no doubt see you at the gym today.
I'll be in. I mean, I've got to train before I start, so I will be in from about, probably the next 45 minutes to an hour. So
I'll be in there about 12ish, 12:30, something like that.
Okay. Right. I've got to figure out how to stop this thing. I've got it. I've got it. It's fine. I got it. I got it.
My desktop for the rest of the day.
Sure. Right. Cool. Right. I'll see you in a bit.
Speak to you in a bit. Cheers, buddy.